job costing that includes overhead allocation for contractors. Tracking your cost of goods without allocating for overhead is similar to measuring your gas mileage but totally ignoring the price of the car. Most contractors stop when they get to the gross profit number and go, hey, look at my gross margin, and they totally neglect the overhead. By the end of this video, you're gonna know how to uncover your overhead, true overhead, and what that looks like, so you can build it into your job costing model and really know if your jobs are making money or not. So as we travel around the country and talk to different contractors, a lot of the conversations that we have typically are around people and money. Usually we'll ask, what's your big headache? And they fall in one of those two categories. But when we get to the money conversation, it's really just an issue of not knowing. What we find is a lot of contractors find themselves, they've got a fair amount of money coming in. It's not a front door problem usually. It's usually a back door problem, in that so much money is coming out, and some of the money coming in is really not their money. Sometimes it can be borrowed money because the money that was going out so fast that they had to run to the bank to get money to come in the front door again. And so rarely is front door money the problem, it's usually the back door. And we've got to both close that back door and have honest conversations around the financial of a contracting business, because if you're not careful, you can make a lot of money in construction, but you can also lose a lot of money really quick in the business of construction. We've even had contractors that go so far to do a really good job on their estimates and tracking their cost of goods sold, and they look at their gross profit and the gross margin and they go, man, we're killing it, and totally neglect their overhead. In fact, as we're meeting a lot of these contractors, that's what we'll hear. Well, my margins are 28%, my margins are 35, 40%, and they think they've got it cornered, but what they forgot about was the overhead, the cost to run the business. You've heard it before, there's a difference between the business and the product. So we need to make sure that we're clarifying what those two things are and understanding the profitability, not just of the business, but of the individual job itself. So let's talk about both the job costing and the overhead side of this. So if we want to merge these two things together, the basics of job costing is this right here. We've got a healthy contract value of whatever that is. It's called $100,000 that you have in the estimate. From the estimate, we also need to understand what our cost of goods are in that estimate. Now, how do we work that out? There's a great little acronym that you can think through if you want accurate cost of goods, and it's the acronym SLIME. And it's really the SLME with just a line in the middle. These are your people cost, and these are your non-people costs. So your people costs are going to be your subcontractors and any W-2 labor that you're taking above the line, meaning they're on staff for you full time, but you're actually going to cost code them directly to this job, quote, above the line with the cost of goods. The line we're talking about is this line right here. And so they go above the line. Then your non-people cost of goods will be your materials and your equipment. And so the materials and equipment, the subcontractors and the labor, that all goes into this cost of goods. So when you subtract cost of goods from your contract value, it gets you your gross margin, your gross profit. So this is the number when contractors are going, we're running 39% gross margin. That's the number they're talking about. But I would even argue that a lot of times they don't know that number. What they think they know is they're running 39% margins based on their contract value and what their cost of goods are supposed to be. But they're not actually doing costing by job to determine what the costs actually are. And so we need to make sure that we're tracking each subcontractor, each bit of labor, each of our materials and equipment, that every time we get an invoice, that we make sure that we're getting invoices properly and on time. And then every time we receive that invoice, that we're actually tracking that invoice. You can just start with a spreadsheet. And by tracking that invoice, we're watching our cost of goods numbers go up, up, and up so that we have an accurate reflection. And so we'll challenge a lot of people when they say, hey, I'm running a 35% margin. We're like, do you know, or are you guessing? So as we go back through our job costing methodology, we've got contract value, then we've got an accurate cost of goods sold that we're going to try and shoot for as best we can. It moves over our gross profit, but we're not done. At that point, we still have expenses to run the business. So up here, what we're doing with the cost of goods is we're running the product. Down here, what we're doing is we're running the business. So overhead are any expenses generally that are tabbed to running the business. Cost of goods are any expenses generally that are tabbed to running the actual product or the project, based on whatever job it is that you're doing. So many contractors, what they'll do is they'll start contract value, subtract cost of goods, get margins, and just stop there and go, that's it. And we want to go, no, keep going. There's overhead attached with this. So you can say I'm running a 40% margin right here, but realistically, by the time you get done with all of your overhead, the net income on that one job may be 4% or 10% or 18% or whatever. But we don't truly know the profitability of the project here We know part of the truth, but that whole truth is not going to be spoken until we've actually tabbed overhead to that, and all the overhead needs to be accounted. For you owners of construction businesses, many times you do not include your own take of the business in the salary of the overhead. But if you're not drawing a salary from your construction company, but you're drawing profits out of it, that's part of overhead. You're actually taking money out of the business for that, but it's not getting cost coded. So you think you're running these super healthy margins, but the reality is you may be having a lot less money than you think, or the reason that you have a lot less money than you think is because we're not appropriately costing. So we've got to merge job costing, that's all of this, with overhead understanding and how the overhead fits within the job costing. In fact, I would argue that many contractors think job costing is here and stops here. But full job costing does not take place until we go all the way down and understand the true profitability job by job. Because once you know that, now you can make powerful decisions. Do we hire, not hire? Do we keep going to this geography and that geography? Do we take on these projects, these ideal clients? You get to understand a lot of different things when you can run through a full job cost. But we've got to have the job cost linked up with the overhead so we understand every dime that's got to be taken out of that ultimate contract value and see what we're left with. Now, this probably brings into a greater discussion around markup and margin. Hey, I give my markup, but my margin's not very good. Why does that work that way? Okay, let's look at markup. This is usually what you do during the estimate right here. So markup, and then down here, let's put margin. And this is usually what's left over somewhere down in this area down here. So let's say that you wanted to do a 25% markup on something. So something costs $10,000, and we want a 25% markup. That's going to take that up to $12,500. And so we look at that and go, that should be what I'm making out of the job, right? But then we come down here to margin and we take the delta between these two, the 12,500 and the 10,000, and we're left with $2,500. Well, what's $2,500 into 12,500? The total price here, it's only 20%. So your margin is 20%, although your markup was 25%. And so there's a delta between the two. You might ask, why does this matter? And so here it is. If your overhead is 25% and you mark up 25%, you're actually killing yourself before you ever get started, because all you're going to get back is 20% on that job. And so your markup has to take into account what your margin ultimately is going to be on this. But you really can't get to this unless you start doing proper job costing and put job costing in its place with a full capture and understanding of the overhead and how it impacts. Listen, I know this can be a little bit overbearing, and you need a system, you need a tree to be able to put this ornament on. And so if you go click on the link in the description below, I've got a powerful video that'll walk you through not just the job costing element, but it'll help you understand where this job costing and all financials fit within the entire construction of a construction business. So I want you to go click on that link below. I've got a video for you that you can walk through, and it's called How to Build a System in Your Construction Business. And in that system, you'll begin to replicate and automate this idea of job costing so you have a really good perspective, not only on the markup you need to apply to be able to get the margin on the back end, but you make sure that you've accounted both for your cost of goods, which are made up of the subs, labor, materials, and equipment, and you've also accounted for the overhead. A lot of contractors get stopped here, but they need to add this in, not fully understanding markup versus margin with those same things. Make sure you click on that link below and go watch that full-scale training video that I provided for you to how to build a system for your construction business, because we want you liberated from chaos to make time for the things that matter most.